What occurs when a man begins developing romantic feelings for his lover directly in front of a sibling, and that very sibling is about to become his brother-in-law. The narrative commences with a student named Matthew who is about to become someone's brother-in-law. He begins narrating a tale. Matthew had arrived in Paris from America to pursue his studies. He was an enormous cinema enthusiast and never missed an opportunity to view a film. One day there was a demonstration at the university against the administration. Matthew was also present there. That's when a young woman named Elizabeth called out to him and declared, "Matthew, I observe you here daily. You never communicate with anyone. You don't even smile. Are you homosexual?" Matthew was startled by her inquiry, but didn't respond much. He simply replied, "I'm here from America, and I don't know anyone here yet, so I remain solitary." Hearing that, Elizabeth summoned her sibling Theo and introduced him to Matthew. The three of them began conversing while sitting nearby, discussing cinema and other topics. Suddenly, the authorities arrived. The three of them fled from the scene. As they were walking, they continued talking and getting to understand each other better. Matthew felt genuinely delighted. He had just acquired two new companions, but nobody knew how long this companionship would endure. Later that evening, Matthew went home and composed a letter to his mother telling her about his new companions and then went to sleep. The next morning, Theo called and invited him over for dinner. Matthew and Theo had become good companions by then. Matthew went to Theo's residence for dinner and he was astounded. The residence was enormous. He met Elizabeth's mother and they exchanged some casual conversation. Interestingly, the mother didn't even know Matthew had been invited, but she somehow managed to host him anyway. Then he met Elizabeth's father, a poet and an admirer of French literature. Elizabeth's father began discussing his inspiration and poetry, but Matthew wasn't interested at all. He was just pretending to listen. The father sensed this and asked directly, "What are you contemplating?" "Nothing," Matthew replied, but the father didn't believe him and pressed again. That's when Matthew stated he was contemplating clothing and a lighter, how similar they are in color, how fire interacts with fabric, and how humans also share similarities in strange ways. Hearing that, Elizabeth's father was impressed. He looked toward Theo and declared, "If only Theo could be more like you." Theo and his father never got along. The father was calm and introverted, while Theo loved being around individuals and had a positive outlook on existence. The differences between them even emerged during dinner. Theo's parents were always busy with work and rarely at home, so most of the time only Theo and Elizabeth remained in the residence. That day, the parents had to depart again, so they left shortly after dinner. After they departed, Elizabeth asked Matthew to stay overnight, but Matthew stated he wanted to return to his room. To stop him, Elizabeth kissed him and asked once more if he would stay. Now, Matthew was also beginning to feel attracted to Elizabeth, so he agreed to stay because he too wanted to enjoy existence a little. That night, when everyone had gone to bed, Matthew emerged from the bathroom. Maybe he had gone in to do something. As he stepped out, he quietly checked Elizabeth's room. To his shock, he saw Elizabeth sleeping there, and right next to her was her sibling, Theo. Seeing the two of them like that left Matthew stunned and disturbed. Confused and uncomfortable, he returned to his room and somehow managed to fall asleep. The next morning, while he was still sleeping, Elizabeth entered his room and pulled the blanket off of him. Poor Matthew blushed as soon as he saw her. For a moment, he felt like yelling at her, but instead, he spoke a few words and then stopped. Elizabeth didn't say anything either. She simply smiled and walked away, but something about the whole situation felt genuinely strange to Matthew. Attempting to shake off the peculiarity, he went to freshen up in the bathroom. Elizabeth followed him inside. She stared at his lips and declared, "I genuinely admire your lips," then began applying lipstick on them. Matthew got extremely embarrassed and attempted to leave, but just then Theo walked in too and began taking a shower. He looked at Matthew and declared, "Our parents are going to be absent for a whole month, so we both want you to remain with us." Matthew responded, "But we've only been companions for 3 days. You both don't even know me that well." Theo smiled and declared, "We invited you so we can get to understand you." Now, Matthew was in a genuinely awkward situation. He turned to Elizabeth and asked, If I remain here, would it bother you? Elizabeth laughed and declared, this was all my idea. So clearly both siblings wanted Matthew to remain, but what exactly they wanted from him was still unclear. After contemplating for a while, Matthew finally decided to remain. One day, the three of them were sitting in a room playing a game. In this game, Elizabeth and Theo would act out a scene from a movie, and Matthew had to guess the movie's title. If he got it correct, excellent. If not, he'd have to accept defeat. Elizabeth then acted out a scene from an old classic movie, but Matthew had watched numerous films, so he easily guessed the correct title. As soon as he stated it, both Elizabeth and Theo got extremely excited and impressed. They declared, we've been searching for a companion like you. You're just like us. Then they told him about an old film scene they had always wanted to recreate in real existence. In that movie, three companions visit an art gallery and then race inside it. Now they wanted to do the same thing in real existence. Hearing this, Matthew got nervous. Since he was from America, running through an art gallery could get him into serious trouble, possibly even get him deported. He attempted to decline, but Elizabeth and Theo didn't take his concerns seriously. They kept pushing him, attempting to convince him repeatedly. After extensive pleading from Elizabeth and Theo, Matthew finally agrees to enter the art gallery. The three of them sneak into the gallery and begin their race. They manage to complete it without getting caught, so they all feel exhilarated and proud. On their way home, it begins to rain and they get soaked. Theo lends Matthew some dry clothing, then goes off to grab beverages. While he's gone, Matthew notices some framed photographs on a table, including a very revealing picture of Elizabeth. Embarrassed, he quickly tucks it into his undergarments. His behavior makes it clear he's a timid individual. Soon, everyone gathers back in the room to play their guessing game. This time, Elizabeth performs another movie scene, and it's Theo's turn to guess. But Theo can't come up with the title and loses the round. As a forfeit, Elizabeth dares him to rock her little toy rocking horse, something no sister would normally ask her sibling to do. Theo takes it in stride, though, and rather than feeling embarrassed, he happily gives the little horse a ride. The next day, Theo takes Matthew out to a restaurant. Over lunch, Matthew nervously declares, I've never done anything like this in front of my own sister. You two sleep together and I've seen you both. What kind of relationship do you have? Theo smiles and explains, when we were born, we shared one body. Then we split apart, but our minds stayed linked. That's why we feel no difference between us. One day, the three of them play their game again. Theo acts out a scene this time, but neither Elizabeth nor Matthew can name the film, so they each owe a forfeit. Theo daringly tells them to kiss each other in front of him. Matthew, shocked, stammers, don't drag me into this. But Elizabeth treats it like any other dare. Without hesitation, she begins undressing. Matthew panics and attempts to flee. Theo blocks the door to stop him, and Elizabeth, now fully ready, joins in. Overwhelmed by their insistence, Matthew gives in and allows them to kiss him. After all, most individuals wouldn't mind kissing a woman. Then, Elizabeth removes Matthew's shirt, only to discover the hidden photograph of herself tucked inside. Realizing he'd hidden it, she smiles. The three of them share a passionate moment, and in that instant, Matthew realizes Elizabeth is still a virgin and that everything she and Theo stated about their sibling bond was true. Theo was quietly observing them make love. From that day on, Matthew began loving Elizabeth every single day. One day after they were intimate, Matthew asked her, what if your parents discover about me? What will they think and what will you do? Elizabeth replied, that day will never arrive, and if we're ever forced to separate, I'll end my existence. Later, Matthew feels hungry and heads to the kitchen to obtain something to consume. When he returns to the room with nourishment, he finds Elizabeth and Theo sleeping together. Seeing this, Matthew declares, you both share such a deep bond. Your relationship is so strong. I feel fortunate just to be your companion. But Theo bluntly responds, Elizabeth and I are one. Nobody can come between us. Matthew feels awkward hearing that, but doesn't say anything and quietly lies down to sleep. Over time, Theo begins getting jealous seeing Matthew and Elizabeth grow closer. One day, all three are taking a bath together, and an argument breaks out between Theo and Matthew. Theo declares, Americans are so arrogant. They're fighting in Vietnam, eliminating innocent individuals. Matthew shoots back. Not all Americans are like that. I came here to study, not to fight anyone. The argument keeps escalating until Elizabeth steps in and calms them both down. Then Theo challenges Matthew. You declare we're true companions, but what proof do you have of that? Matthew asks. What kind of proof do you require to believe in affection or companionship? Then Theo and Elizabeth state they want to clean his hammer, a suggestive metaphor, and Matthew is completely shocked. He angrily replies, what you're doing is wrong. He continues, your bodies might be grown up, but your minds are still like children. That kind of behavior suits kids, not individuals your age. Then Matthew turns to Elizabeth and declares, you don't understand anything. You've never had a boyfriend. You've never even been on a date. You just do whatever Theo tells you. Hearing this, Elizabeth is stunned into silence. The next day, Matthew takes her out on a genuine date. They have dinner together and then go see a movie. While sitting side by side, they laugh, enjoy the film, and have a wonderful time. Afterward, they return home content. Meanwhile, Theo is shown being intimate with another woman. Seeing this, Elizabeth becomes deeply hurt. Watching her sibling with someone else makes her weep. She begins to feel jealous of Theo. The next day, another argument breaks out between Theo and Matthew. Matthew tells him, you talk extensively, but you never think about anyone else. If you keep existing like that, nothing beneficial will come your way. You need to change the way you exist and the way you treat individuals. Just then, Elizabeth walks in and asks both of them to come to the drawing room with her. When they arrive there, they see a tent set up. All three of them go inside the tent together. When Elizabeth and Theo were little, they used to sleep in that very tent. So they decide to sleep there again. All three of them lie down in the tent and fall asleep together. That same night, their parents return home. They look around the residence searching for the children and eventually find all three of them sleeping together in one place. Seeing this scene shocks their parents. Without waking them up, the parents quietly leave the room, go to another room, and leave behind a check. Then they leave the residence. The next morning, when Elizabeth awakens, she notices the check left behind in the room. She immediately realizes that her parents had been there and must have seen everything. The guilt begins to overwhelm her, and she begins to wonder what her parents must think of her. Feeling ashamed and emotional, Elizabeth begins to weep. She walks into the kitchen, then quietly returns to the tent and lies down again. Outside, a demonstration is occurring in the streets. Suddenly, a stone from the demonstration breaks through one of their windows, waking both Matthew and Theo. Matthew asks Elizabeth about her smile, and the three of them begin looking around the residence for the place where that smile was born, maybe searching for a memory or some happiness. As they head downstairs, they end up getting caught up in the demonstration. Joining in and supporting the cause, Matthew attempts to stop Theo and Elizabeth from going too far, telling them that they shouldn't be doing this, but they don't listen. They keep moving forward with the demonstration more and more passionately. At that moment, Matthew realizes something. These two don't understand the language of affection or reason. Left with no other choice, he walks away from them. Matthew was never someone who liked violence or chaos, so he chooses a different path and walks off in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, the authorities begin to respond forcefully to the protesters, moving in on the crowd, and that's where the movie concludes. So, what do you think? Was Matthew correct to walk away, or were Theo and Elizabeth correct in their own way? Let us know in the comments. More videos coming soon.